We are actually genetic experiments of an alien race. It is way too obvious that there has to be more life besides just us. Aliens have been here and are coexisting with us for a very, very long time. They exist since before us. This is the not so secret truth about aliens. Namaste, everyone. I'm going to speak about aliens, whatever I know about them, and whatever's going on currently, as well as what I think this subject matter will be used for by certain kinds of people to dictate the masses into. So, I've just finished my day, made myself a little whiskey, and wanted to quickly get this out of the way because this is the not so secret truth about aliens. As far as I'm aware, I could be completely wrong. All right. Now, I personally used to read books. There were books like Close Encounters of the First Kind, Second Kind, Third Kind. When I was a school kid, somehow I was interested in space and I was interested in the topic of aliens. As well as I remember, when we were all kids, we are asked different questions such as, what do you want to be when you grow up? And for me, one of the answers was an astronaut. So I've had this particular fascination with the outer worlds, and I personally did not know that in my own lifetime, that topic, which when I was a child used to come across to us as fiction, is gonna turn out to be something which is almost round the corner. Most probably, not necessarily, in terms of the public eye. All right. Now, as far as my personal knowledge goes, aliens have been here and are coexisting with us for a very, very long time. This might sound a little too out there for a lot of the people who are used to the regular kind of work that I do, because I've never actually spoken about this topic. But I feel it is one of the things which are going to be of geopolitical importance, which will impact everyone from an individual to macro economies such as a country going forward. And hence I feel that in the spirit of light, that everyone should know whatever is worth knowing about. So I personally think that the aliens have been here for a very long time, and this is not just me. I will come to the ways through which I personally know this, but basically they have been here for a very long time, and the biggest case of probability is that they exist since before us. There is also one case of probability which suggests that we are actually genetic experiments of an alien race, humanity, and that Earth is a particular experimental planet where let me leave that to your research and I will point you how to do all of this going ahead. But basically, there are multiple kinds of forms of life, regardless of whether you call them aliens using Western language, whether you call them bhoot pret using Indian folk language, whether you understand the true map of the world as well as the lokas according to our Vedic knowledge coming from things like Srimad Bhagavatam, etc., where basically we exist in Bhu Loka, and then we have multiple lokas existing actually within this planetary entity which we call Earth. Now, what I'm about to share is something which comes from whatever I personally have learned via a bunch of different fields and over decades, over not decades, but like over 1.5 decades. And aliens has not really been a topic of fascination for me, just because I personally think it is way too obvious that there has to be more life besides just us. If humanity thinks that we are the only ones that exist, that is a very, very egocentric view of life, I personally feel. And hence, it was never surprising for me to come across the books which I read. I really hope that I'm saying the right names, because this was when I was in 6th and 7th grade. And those books had information relating to what is actually quite popularly available on the internet with regards to the Roswell crashes in the state of New Mexico in the United States back in the 1940s. And Hollywood, for those who have not understood by now, is actually almost always symbolically telling us what the truth is, whether you look at it from the point of The Simpsons and the things which they've predicted, or you look at movies such as The Matrix or even Independence Day when it comes to aliens. All right. Now, basically, I had come across all of that kind of information regarding Area 51, the crashes in Roswell, etc. But then, in the recent years of my life, when I was studying a lot of things related to emotion, heart, pain, grief, guilt, anxiousness, punishment, all of this, compassion, etc., I came across a certain few different kinds of places of information which were basically humans channeling advice or counsel coming from an alien entity. All right. So this was to do with, I'll tell you, there's actually a series of books called The Seth Material, Seth, by Jane Roberts. Along with that, on the internet, you'll find Light Source Tah. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's P''Tah. And then you have The Law of One by this entity called Ra. And then you have many others which I personally have not experienced or explored, such as Cryon, the entity Cryon, which I believe Lee Carroll channelizes. And then there's many. All right. And also, basically, it is said that you can also Google terms such as indigo children, rainbow children. It is said that a lot of births which have taken place on Earth since the late 50s, 60s, 70s are souls from other planetary systems that are coming into human bodies to bring across a lot of different kinds of ways of living via inspiration. So the hippie community, I know, has its own labels attached to it, but the hippie community overall, in terms of living away from this organized, really rigid structure of society that completely limits a human being's freedom and creativity and turns him into a rat that is always running behind the idea of happiness in the future. Now, that is a particular way of living that most people are now suddenly waking up to, because actually the number of people who are waking up has rapidly increased from 2012 onwards, which was actually the end of not the world but the age of Capricorn, as per the Mayan civilization, where I think they personally knew that no true Mayan would exist afterwards, but that is the age that they were existing in. And the number of people who have been waking up is a lot, and now you will start coming across these kinds of people who are more aware and down to earth and live more authentically and embrace sovereignty. So whether and the idea behind all of this is that basically earth is in a very precarious situation as of now, and it can go anyway. It can go towards complete domination via artificial intelligence, transhumanism, where basically along with certain things which they have put in our bodies in the recent years, they are going to also put proper technology like chips and a bunch of other things. And I believe in Sweden and even in the States, you can just swipe your palm now, or you've got chips in the wrist. So basically, either that, where we don't really know ultimately what the future is going to be, because morality, ethics, conscientiousness, etc., goes in the hands of man-made computing systems, yet you don't know, that apocalyptic scenario is always looming up ahead. And then on the other hand, you have the other possibility of earth, where everyone wakes up or majority wakes up and the ways of our life completely change. Because if you think about it today, the way we are living, it's complete delusion. What is actually the cheapest, such as food which nature produces, is sold at the most expensive rate called organic. All right, because the true land has been completely ruined, the nature of our soil, by certain companies who are involved in a lot of genetic modification of our seeds. And then you have companies which are into pesticides, etc. And then you have proper politicians who allowed this to come into their country, such as in India we've had complete disruption of our nature and soil via a particular agricultural minister who we had a few decades ago. So basically, we could either come towards realizing that everything is working the fucking opposite way. All right? It's turned upside down on its head. The idea of happiness, the illusion of money, this piece of paper that apparently is now the new god for most human beings out in the cities, that people are killing others for it, people are lying 24/7 for it, people are working jobs they hate for it, and many such things which are happening, because what society truly needs to thrive and prosper, the values of love and trust and integrity, are rapidly disappearing. But at the same time, there is a rapid awakening which is happening via a lot of pain for a lot of people, which is allowing them to wake up to their own heart center and first of all become whole themselves, so that they realize that nothing from the outside is actually going to fulfill them, whether it's the money, whether it's the AI, no matter what actually we might think lies outside of us in terms of our fulfillment, will be God and beneficial. God, the idea of God itself is not actually outside of us, but let's leave that for another discussion, and if you would like me to speak on that, let me know. But this is some of the information which I want to share, that basically you can study the different lokas via either our Vedic systems of knowledge, or you can study real documented pieces of evidence with regards to actual alien crashes and their appearances, and then people's experiences of it, etc. I know the rabbit hole is very deep, and a lot of decoys have been planted to mislead people. But the thing is that it's not that difficult to come across truth, especially if the way you live is as a truth seeker. All right. So if you just want to be a nerd who knows everything that is worth knowing so that you can talk about it in social circles, that's a different story. But for anyone who's a truth seeker, you can actually come to know any of this. I've given you a bunch of different names that you can actually start searching towards. And then there's many more incredibly deeply hidden resources that I don't personally think it's the right time to share. But they do exist, those bits and pieces of knowledge, and please do some research so that you are aware of when, for example, disclosure will happen, which is, like how, let's look at a country like India. The news is penultimate when it comes to information. However, we know it for a fact from the times of the world wars that all formats of mass media, actually AI, aliens, everything is to do with the central tenet of technology. All right. So mass media, ever since its invention, has been used as a propaganda tool, and social media is the new mass media. And governments have used them to sway the people and their resources, their emotions, their attention in particular directions to make particular things happen, which were not necessarily good for the greater good of humanity. Now, in my opinion, the way disclosure will happen, which is public acceptance from the government authorities on news channels, which are supposed to be gospel truth for the masses, whereas it's pure manufactured content, all right? But basically, when that schematic program unfolds, it is basically going to talk about how these aliens are actually not friendly. and that they are hostile. Now, this is my understanding up until now, and I could be wrong, but basically that they are hostile, they do not like us, and they want to kill us, and they want to take over the fucking planet, etc. And that again, all of us have to unite against this invisible enemy. This is a particular scenario which we have very recently gone through, because of which people gave up their natural born rights, not even your constitutional rights, but your natural born rights. All right. So, an invisible enemy, and that we have to prepare ourselves against them, for which suddenly there'll be more surveillance, there'll be more lockdowns, there'll be more clamping down on the basic human and their life. And this is one way. And why I mentioned technology especially is because what we come to know is the latest technology is actually super duper old. They have made this new phone with titanium in it, and my god, now they're going to sell it for a fucking fortune. Whereas to make it, it costs next to nothing. Now, truth be told, the way technology functions is that you have the military industrial complex. All right. So you have certain organizations and companies which are even bigger than governments and their leaders, the financiers of war, let's just say, that when a new technology is invented, they use it before anyone else. And by the time that technology becomes redundant and stale and old and fucking nothing for them, let's say it takes 100 years, then they'll give it to the public that, you know what, we discovered the latest fucking camera that can fit in a phone. You must sell an organ of yours to be able to buy it. Because this entire thing is a grand scheme in a lot of ways when it comes to technology. So it is used by very few to stay so ahead of the curve, and that's okay, it's up to them. But basically, if we as humans feel that what we know, such as us going to a particular satellite or a particular planet, that we are advanced, or wow, look, we are breaking barriers, that is what you think, because that is what you are being told. So the dissemination of information is very, very tightly controlled. And that is why I wanted to mention about the technology part. But basically, this disclosure can be around the corner and can happen now, most probably within a few years. And we shouldn't be surprised by it, because in almost every culture there are, whether you take Christianity with exorcism, so some foreign entity being alive and being animated and having its own free will and mind, taking possession is the secondary thing. But that there are entities, you take Christianity, you take Hinduism with the bhoot, pret, ancestor, pitris, etc. And then you take Islam with the jinns. Basically, in a lot of different ways, it's not that this is going to be new news for us. Things besides human beings that exist is something which has been there in folklore, culture, religion, across civilizations. And what I personally think when it comes to these beings from outside is that's a very vast thesis which I have, let's just call it, and let's save that for later. But up until now, I wanted to touch on these few points with regards to disclosure, with regards to technology, with regards to the amount of material which is already out there, with regards to the way Hollywood itself has told us a lot of things, and a bunch of these different things, so that illumination can start happening across all of us. Forget all the different scenarios, such as we might be genetic experiments of the aliens, and even the way, if you will study, for example, even the Egyptian hieroglyphs, there are literally depictions of these gods from the sky descending. And then if you look at For example, our temples, if you will study the science behind the construction of a temple compared to all the ones which are now made by politicians in your neighborhoods just to keep collecting money, the true temple is constructed. There's an entire text dedicated to the construction of a temple using sacred geometry and mathematics in alignment with the cosmos so that it can be an energy center. And normally the top part of a temple, the conical part, similar to ziggurats, similar to pyramids, etc., that conical part is basically called a vimana, and a vimana is normally something which flies. And again, you will find, if you start studying all of this, it's up to you whether you want to do it or not. You'll find that basically all of these drawings actually exist even inside our own temples of the Vimana separating from the rest of the temple body and going upwards. And then if you take our own texts of, Ramayana, Mahabharata, etc., you had these people with vehicles where they would be flying through the air, or they would have weapons and bows, etc., which were really, really advanced technology. But now all of this is obviously a matter of debate, or none of us existed back then to be a witness to this, etc., etc., etc. But again, those are things which can be quashed about, but one needs to have a lot more deeper knowledge for those kind of things. But for now, this is the not so secret truth about aliens, that there is nothing that secret about it. All right. And to practice your own free will, independent thinking when it comes to believing or not believing what the authorities will actually end up telling us when it comes to actual disclosure at a grand scheme, at a grand level. Because you've had Obama speak about it, you've had this new ex-military person from the United States suddenly come out and talk about it. You've had that brilliant dramatization of these bodies being shown in the Mexican parliament, if I'm not wrong. And, the internet goes like, oh my God. Like the biggest source of news for the internet today is Instagram. Can you fucking believe it? All right. So I'll leave you with that. Let me know if you have any thoughts, any questions, or if somebody wants to talk more about this, we'll hop on a podcast. Ciao.